on.
Hello, everybody. Welcome for joining us again. This is yet another episode of TheoryForge going strong. This is episode 12, I believe, and we have a very special show today. We have Dave Georgeson and Steve Danuser, and they are joining us today for a nice interview. They're going to answer some questions, and they're going to participate with you guys. So enjoy the show. The first, I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit. You guys might know them already, but you guys kind of tell about what your main roles are for the game, and then tell us a little bit about what we're looking forward to in December.
Well, I'm Steve Danuser, and
I'm
what? I really figured you'd deadpan that, to be honest. So I'm Dave Georgeson. I'm the director of development for the EverQuest franchise, and well, if something's wrong, it's my fault, and if it's really good, then the team did a great job.
And I'm Steve Danuser. I'm the lead content designer on EQ Next and the lore master of our new version of Norath. And on Landmark, I do various design tasks, including all those veins that people love to mine.
Lore master.
Awesome. Well, you guys, thanks for joining us. Right. We're happy to have you here today. We're going to go by topics here today. Our first big one, we know crafting is coming up in the near future, and there's things that are already there for the final system. But we have some questions. I'll start us off here with how much of the game economy is meant to be player-driven by the trade and sale of crafted items?
All of it. Yeah, the economy is largely player driven. When claim vendors go in, you might have heard about claim vendors. No, we haven't really done that much detail on them. But the claim vendors, you'll be able to put them on your claim and then put up stuff that you find in the world, so that other players can come to your claim and pop open the interface and be able to see the things that you're willing to sell. Right now, that's just items that you loot in the world, of which there's only a few until we get monsters in, but there will be more, a lot more. And so there will be a lot of variety, and because our loot is generally randomized, the stats and everything are randomized, and you'll see a lot of variation between different items. That means that there's a lot of reason to poke around and see what's available on different sites. And then, of course, we already allow trading. And in general, most of our stuff is player-driven. As far as like Player Studio is all about the players. You can see the galleries. Hopefully someday we'll get to sell deeds to different claims, but that's quite a ways off. Long ways off because there's legal issues we have to solve. But in general, basically everything is player driven. You'll go kill monsters and pick up stuff and be able to sell that. You'll be able to make things and sell those. There isn't anything where it's basically us to you. And in fact, currently we don't have any mechanism by which you can sell to a store. Like you can't sell to an NPC and get coin. Coin comes from other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Player-driven economy.
There was a little bit of an issue. I played Arcade for a small bit, and in Arcade, you actually could buy things from the store, like with real money, and then actually sell it on the auction house. And that was like a real big issue with the game. It was causing the economy to fluctuate dramatically and like really craziness. How's that kind of fair to what you guys are thinking about for EverQuest Next?
If you're talking about EverQuest Next. Well, in EverQuest Next, well, that's a different subject. But
or for Landmark.
In Landmark.
Sure.
Yeah, there are no merchants in Landmark.
Okay.
There just are none, so you can't buy stuff that way,
right.
Which solves a lot of that problem. In EverQuest Next, there will be merchants, but we don't intend them to be the source of cool stuff. They're a source of mundane stuff that you need for other elements, but the cool stuff you still have to go out in the world and adventure or make.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Sure.
Okie dokie.
And suddenly there was silence.
I'll go next.
Dave's answers are so complete and all-encompassing that they just drown out everything else.
No, we just had a slight hiccup in our order of operations here. All right. One of my questions was that will stats be randomized in crafting, and you answered that at the very beginning. we're wondering if there's a chance while crafting an item in Landmark or EverQuest Next that generally comes with one keyword, if there's a chance that a bonus keyword ability is added or a bonus keyword effect is added on an exceptionally rare item.
That's a great question for either Michael Mann or Ryan Shannon, who are not here right now, because they're much more in the particulars of the system than we are. It's something that could probably be supported. Whether it's something that we intend to do for Landmark, I'm not sure.
To answer your question literally, or specifically, yes. There's a chance.
There's always a chance.
Yeah, we for EverQuest Next we haven't specified a lot of stuff we haven't decided the absolute outcome, because a lot of times when we're experimenting in Landmark, what we're doing is, well, that's what we're doing, is we're experimenting. So we'll do stuff and then we'll see the player reaction, what you guys do with it, how the economy works, all that stuff, and then we'll tweak and we'll modify so that we're perfecting an underlying system that when we put it into EverQuest Next, we don't have to worry about certain variables. We only have to worry about the new variables that we introduce when we're building that game.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So here's a question. In EverQuest Next, will crafted gear be equal to dropped gear in terms of desirability and functionality? Will there be differences that you can only get from crafted gear that you can't get from dropped gear and vice versa?
Well, again, we haven't finalized all that stuff, but that's definitely our goal. Like, we want crafted stuff to be legit. I've been a crafter in almost every MMO there is. And I can say universally, it was a waste of time in all of them. And we'd really like it to not be a waste of time here. When you're putting effort into crafting and everything like that, we'd like it so that players are seeking you out, because you can do stuff either directly, because you can make something that's specifically, like, since a lot of the loot is randomized, you may not go out in the world and be able to find the exact thing that you want, whereas a crafter could narrow in on it and make it more efficiently for you. And then it would also be cool if crafters had a couple of things that were unique, but we haven't finalized those decisions.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to the crafting system that just aren't in Landmark yet. And there's going to be ways to augment gear beyond what you can do now that will heavily rely on crafters to take the things that are found in the world by players and remake those into something that can upgrade gear. So it's meant to be a system that is about the players interacting with one another, and crafting is right at the heart of that role.
In fact, you'll see a lot of that in Landmark actually this month.
Yep.
So as we focus in on this gameplay loop that we've been talking about, crafting is a part of that, and salvage and imbuing and those elements all go in, hopefully by the end of the year before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed
only weeks away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed, unlike the crafting tools, the harvesting tools rather, the armors and weapons don't really seem to have like copper, iron, mithril, and that sort of stuff. Is that eventually a goal, or is everything going to kind of be more horizontal and side grade?
No, what you're seeing right now is basically we're just using dirt for those, and the reason why we're just using dirt is because they're temporary. We didn't want anybody to get attached to them by saying, well, I just put like 1,500 diamond into that. How could you take it away? So we just make it dirt, and that way when we take it away, because we're going to take it away, it doesn't offend anybody. And then later on when we have the real recipes and we know exactly what we're doing, we'll go ahead and let people invest into them.
Yeah, literally as we speak, designers are implementing new recipes for armors that take into account salvaging and the whole new harvesting tiers that we're going to have in place. So it's like a complete systemic change in a lot of ways from what's there now. And those armors, as Dave said, that you're playing with now we're just temporary to test out a lot of the fundamental mechanics of the system.
And you guys are focusing way too hard, because the lack of smiles is really making me feel like we're not doing a good job here.
We're way
That's
funnier
wonderful.
than what you guys are reacting.
Yeah,
Come on, this is a tough room.
We're amusing people.
It's hard to see my smile through my beard sometimes.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Cool.
Well, with all the changes to the crafting and what's going on, will the rarities, as it's set up now, will that stay the same, or will that also transfer to Next in the same way, or?
Are you talking rarity of harvested resources?
I was thinking more along the kind of the weapons and things, or things that we're seeing. Yeah, more or less. And will that change basically as you start adding more into the system?
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's new bunches of dropped items. There's a ton new recipes coming in, new appearances for stuff. It's tough to talk about the scope of it because it's pretty extensive.
Well, there's one thing, like for instance, even without changing any of the recipes, some of that stuff is going to get harder to build because when we push the caves all the way down to the center, one of the things that I was just talking about to Darren McPherson, the lead designer, yesterday, was the fact that metal is going to get a lot more rare. Now, there's going to be refining stuff so that you can take those little bits of metal that you get and turn them into lots of building material that you can build with, which is great. But metal itself, like the regular iron and copper and things like that, will become a lot more rare, and those elements will be needed for weapons and armors and things. So they'll be actually a lot more challenging to build. Mm-hmm. Although I'm probably overstating when I start with copper and iron as my rare examples. But there's you know what I mean, like mithril and stuff like that would be harder to get.
And
Gotcha.
throwing in some monsters guarding.
Yeah.
Some of those,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we surround it with risk and we make it a little bit harder to find and so on and so forth, that stuff becomes a lot more rare, which means that the adrenaline seekers that go down into those caves and try to find that stuff are facing more combat, which is good for them. And then when they finally come out of the caves, they definitely have a market for it because there's a bunch of builders out there that are going to be looking for not having to go into the caves. Mm-hmm. So hopefully this all works together. We'll see how.
Day one raiding party central around somebody who's got a gem seeker's brooch. You just keep on hunting those gems and getting beat up.
Yeah, the Gem Seeker's brooch will definitely be more interesting when this stuff becomes more rare underground. Right now it's everywhere. You know how it is. And we didn't really figure anybody was going to have a hard time making the flight bauble this morning because, well, everybody's got like 500,000 of everything just about now. But that won't be the case after we go to open beta, and also after we push the caves down, that stuff will get harder to find. Mm-hmm. So squirrel it away till open beta, that's for sure. You'll need it.
Sweet. Yeah, that's actually, personally, that's my favorite. That's one of my favorite things about, or that I'm looking forward to, is the ability to really go out and start to explore in such an incredible, in-depth way, and also have that opposition as opposed to just being it all being free for the taking. You know.
Oh, we have some monsters you've never seen before too, which I'm not going to talk about,
nice.
But they're coming soon.
All right, we won't ask them.
We saw that same hint last week.
I'm assuming that they're all underground monsters since all we've seen are above.
Oh, you'd make that assumption, huh? You think that's safe?
He's a fisherman. Look at him. He's
all right.
out the line.
You can go ahead and just blithely wander out into the night. Or the twilight if people are upset about it not being dark enough.
Nice.
I'm excited to see the immersion you guys are bringing back. And that, like, our next big topic is really, like, lore and content. A lot of that plays. I know we're talking a lot Landmark right now, but as for EverQuest Next and maybe Landmark 2, you guys are really trying to infuse the story-based gameplay back into RPGs, make it an RPG again and not just, a solo-based adventure or, a hack and slash or what have you. So, is there any chance for a different kind of media for I know we have the lore right now. Is there any chance for a different kind of media for out of the game lore that you guys are going to use to supplement, like maybe graphic novels or other things like that?
Paper cutout animations.
Hand puppets. Puppet theater. We've talked about doing a dev puppet theater on a weekly basis. Yeah. I mean, that's something that we'd love to do. There's certain elements of that marketing has a hand in and so forth, but it would be great to see all that stuff. Graphic novels, comics.
Online charades.
It would be wonderful. No specific plans at the moment, but I'm sure that stuff develops the closer we get to launch, so we'll see what happens.
I like the chat suggestion of pop-up books.
Pop-up books? Yeah. That would be all right.
Maybe some cards against Nerathians in the future.
Actually, I love that idea.
That is a really great idea.
And knowing that company, they'd probably do it. They'll whip out a variant like that.
Nice.
Yeah, if you've read the fiction, it seems like the whole world is against Nerathians anyway. So some cards against them, that's nothing.
I don't think Steve likes Nerathians.
No, we love them. We just want to build up the drama a little bit. But don't worry, they'll have their day. And that's up to you guys.
What kind of media are you talking about? Because we were in flippant, but what would you like to see?
Yeah, I have quite an extensive comic book collection. My wife hates that, but part of it
right.
includes the EverQuest comics from before, or graphic novels. And I just wondered if that can pop up somewhere.
Well, heck if I know. When Omid and I were talking about it like a year ago, he knew some comic book people, and we were going to look into that. But we never actually did it, so I don't really know whether that's possible or not. And there also used to be a real curse. I don't know whether you know about the comic book curse. No? The industry used to have a joke going around all the time that if you put a comic book out about your game, it was going to fail. Not the comic book, the game. But there's, I think somebody broke that curse just recently, like last year or the year before. But that's a kind of a joke. A graphic novel would be really cool, and it would definitely be conducive to what we do. Our style would probably work pretty well. Moved over into that medium, but we don't have any leads. Nobody's approached us to say, "Hey, I really want to do that."
And actually,
you have to go out and pan around.
you already have the Skylab comic that was already made. Didn't you get a chance to see that, Dave? It involves you, apparently.
Wow, I'm suddenly
we'll have to
frightened,
send that
but,
along.
I don't know.
Google.
I mean, the main thing is, I think that the comic book curse came out of the fact that there was a time when companies almost felt obliged to put out comic books for their games. Like, it was just a given thing that you were going to do. And for us, I think we would take a more careful approach in that if there's a good reason to do it, then that would be something that we pursue. But we're not just going to do it for the sake of doing it.
I would read a graphic novel about the Dark Elves when they're in that other place.
Yeah, that would be very graphic.
That would be
That would be the most graphic of graphic novels.
But that would be an amazing graphic novel.
It would be amazing.
Really
We've been
good.
seeing a lot of things throughout a lot of different games recently that they really are focusing on even splitting the line between comic books and some sort of animation. So you like a game, for example, League of Legends. For every character they release, they kind of are releasing these short comic book lore boxes of them, and it's pretty cool. But I do have a question about lore and content creation. This is going to be more based for EverQuest next, so brace yourselves. But I was kind of curious if there are any desires to make the race of a character affect its abilities or its stats, or so that for example, a gnome warrior might be different than an ogre warrior.
That's not a fiction question. You're trying to sneak a mechanics question in.
Well,
Come on, man. You think we can't tell that from a mile away?
I know. Seriously, the reason we talked about this on Lorgasm, and this is my, I've always been really bummed out because when I go into an MMO and I'm playing my DPS warrior, right, and I'm a hefty, night elf and beefy and stuff, hitting him with a two-handed sword, and then the main tank is this little 2-foot tall gnome who's taken to the chest this giant dragon swipe. It really breaks the immersion for me. So I guess that's for me, for that reason, I'm super immersive into games, and I really would love to see. This is maybe more of a personal suggestion. I would love to see the ability to have different races have different impacts on their classes. So,
to be honest, the debate is still raging internally, and I mean, when we do talk about it, it's a pretty hot conversation. I personally liked the original EQ with the differences in the races stuff. We've talked a lot about whether or not we wanted the hit boxes, the collision boxes on the characters to match their sizes, because if you remember the original EQ, that was actually a real pain in the butt. But in our world, the world's destroyable. So if the ogre doesn't fit through the door, he could just make a new door if he wanted to. So there's ways that you can deal with those kinds of size restrictions, and that's one of the reasons why the debate still goes on. Normally, in a regular game, you just couldn't consider that.
Sure.
But we are trying to enforce role playing. And so, characteristic
to support role playing.
That's what I really meant to say. Yeah, sorry, enforce is a bad word.
Must.
You will. You win.
You must role play.
Wait a minute, let me get my shoe off. There we go.
Yes.
You will. We want people to be able to role play, and so characteristics that supported that would be obviously a cool thing, but it hasn't been decided.
Yeah, it's such a tough thing because you love to do those sorts of things for role play reasons, to make the world feel like it has more meaning and the race choice has all that. But the flip side of it is that anything that you do that affects the mechanics of the game, a certain segment of people will just gravitate toward that and just game it right away. So while you would like to see, ogres being the big tanks and stuff, if that's clearly the best tank, then there will just be a segment of people who choose it for no other reason. Even if they're not necessarily happy with choosing that race, they'll do it for purposes of serving their guild or whatever. So, there's pluses and minuses to it. It's one of those subjects that gets really tricky because of those reasons.
And that's why we keep having the debate.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. I really appreciate that you guys are kind of doing that and consistently putting all of the thoughts on the table and caring more about not just about what is going to make people happy, but what will make a good game, because I think that's really important as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets lost.
I can see one of the other kind of challenges with it is that every race has to be able to play every class more or less. So you can't, make ogres big and beefy but not able to use magic, because in the lore books they just kind of call it a cheap trick and don't really care about it.
Oh my God! See, now this is getting into the debate, and we don't want to have this debate.
I mean,
Because
we do like to rant here.
There's absolutely a legitimate viewpoint that says ogres don't use magic. And so it depends upon what you want your world to be like.
Yeah.
Like, if you really want players to be everything, to be able to be all things in every race, that's a completely legitimate design decision. But it's also completely legitimate to say that in your world, ogres don't use magic, or halflings aren't fighters, or whatever it is. And so that's not a clear-cut decision. People in other games have opted to let everybody do everything because, well, it's easier than telling people no. But telling people no is sometimes really good game design. But anyway.
So,
Rant. Mode.
changing so that we don't get into this huge, deep argument about whether or not we should do this that I did not rant about this time. My question is, in EverQuest Next, with story delivery, you've talked about the rallying calls, large events that happen around the world, and depending on the outcome, the future of the story on that server may change, is my understanding. And tell me if I'm just completely wrong. How early in the story can we expect to see server divergence?
Day 2?
Yeah, I mean, it's set up. There's matters of scale, of course, in terms of what the events are. We're going to want to get people into the game and kind of ease them in a little bit. But the intent is to have that dynamic stuff happening right away from day one. So you'll certainly start seeing different servers push things in different ways. And as the story gets further and further along and there's more kind of chaos coming in, more factors at play in the story, then you'll really see even more divergence in terms of what people are doing and the choices that they're making on their servers.
Yeah. Plus, there will be lots of rallying calls out there, or actually, we don't know how many, but more than one rallying call out there in the world, and the players will be deciding which ones they support. And on different worlds, they may choose to support different rallying calls, which means different outcomes. So very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank you.
will there be more? How many rallying calls will occur at the same time?
We don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be something we'll need to test, and
It's going to be somewhere between 2 and as many as we possibly can.
yeah.
Are they? Is it technical challenges or just?
Yeah, it's a technical challenge.
Technical challenge, and the amount of people making them and so forth. I mean, we don't want we want each one of these rallying calls to be real, like, marquee events that bring the whole world together, and so those have to have a lot of depth to them, a lot of cool things going on. It's just not a collection of random events. So there's a lot of curation and handcrafting that'll have to go into those things, and we want them to feel special. So we don't, again, it's not something we want to throw in just for the sake of reaching a certain number. We want to find what feels good for the world and what we can make that is awesome, that each one of them is really great and compelling, and you want to be part of it.
On the other hand, we know from EQ that one event causes zone crashes. Yeah. So we've got to spread stuff out a little bit. Population is one of the concerns.
Yes.
Well, one last quick lore question. Do you guys have any plans? I know in the original EverQuest, languages were a big deal, especially in certain servers where you didn't get started with a bunch of common. Do you guys have plans for language to make a big impact in how people interact right away?
Well, it's something that we talk about.
The world is different than then.
Yeah.
First of all, we have this.
Yeah.
It is a different world, and there's there again. It's one of those things that there's pluses and minuses to. You want to give a sense of world and that the races have distinction about them, but you also want people to be able to communicate and group up together and take on these huge challenges. If there's rallying calls going on and people can't communicate, that kind of defeats the purpose of doing these big global events. So it's something that languages to one degree or another have been part of EverQuest. And so we want to find ways to work those in, but it's still something that we're talking about in terms of what impact that would be on the game itself.
I admit that I did like them. They were also a colossal pain in the butt at times.
Yeah, I mean,
It depended upon what you were trying to do.
it was cool in original EverQuest to collect a bunch of these languages, but the manner in which you did it was
that
pretty
was
lame.
terrible. Yeah, but I
yeah,
liked the
macroing.
dynamic that. Okay, I'm a dwarf, so I can't read the Elvish
Yeah.
stuff, that kind of stuff, unless I went through these laborious processes to actually learn the language. That was kind of cool. That's a nice role-playing element. That doesn't mean we'll do it, but we're just talking about what we liked in EQ.
Yeah. And in EQ2, they went from originally, buying a book and clicking to learn a language, which wasn't fun either, but some other languages that have come into the game since then required quests to do, and that felt a lot more fulfilling. I remember doing in Kingdom of Sky the quest to learn the Huluk language and stuff like that. Like, that was cool.
I totally just remembered standing there and spamming languages to people in EQ.
Yeah, it was
all
like,
about that.
and they do it in the zone, so you'd see just like you'd be trying to talk to somebody to send tells, and you'd see blop, 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 blop,
And you're just standing there watching it go by until it becomes English.
Yeah,
That's pretty awesome.
it was awesome and terrible, but a lot of things were in those days.
Yeah, there are some really good old mechanics. I hope that all of your guys' discussions over these games are leading to some great future design decisions for EverQuest Next. And speaking of some of the big decisions, like I don't think there's anything bigger today than player versus environment. I know in MMOs that's kind of like the major category of players currently. So that's kind of going to be our next topic. Gio's going to start us off with a question here for that topic.
So I'm kind of curious if you can go into further detail about how monster looting will work at all.
You know what? I don't know that I've read that, Doc.
Yeah, that's again more of a mechanics question than I'm familiar with. I know that
This is one of those rare moments when I'm going to say I don't know.
Yeah, I was just overhearing a conversation today about the loot pinatas for monsters being hooked up, so I know that the loot will be showering from them, but the specifics...
I've talked to Darren about the rarity systems. I've talked about like what kinds of things are going to be involved in the loot, but I didn't actually talk to him about what happens when you kill a monster. So we'll have to check on that. But I have to imagine that it's going to be similar to the way that we do resources, because we didn't. The reason why we did resources the way we did it was because we didn't want people to have to run around and pick up stuff and click on stuff after. We thought it would be more fun to be able to move around and I mean, loot it's kind of weird that it sucks up into you. I admit that, immersive-wise, that's kind of odd. But it sure is a hell of a lot more convenient. Yeah. Well, just... yeah, I just about got really off color there. I'm not going to do that.
Well, like a Ghostbusters, they have a big pack on their back and they're just running around and sucking up trees.
That's much more polite than what I was
Let's go back.
Nice.
Cool. All right, I got a question. It was mentioned on Landmark Live this week that NPCs would innately avoid claims. Will there be ways that on-claim activity can outwardly affect the open world in Landmark?
What?
So, if we're doing something on a claim, say, well, I guess the better question, if I take it back a step, how much like the Storybrick system that for the content of EQ and EQ Next that we saw at SOE Live will the open world content of Landmark be? Right.
Well, Landmark is the first steps. So what you're going to see is that system will mature after initial launch, and it'll get more and more complex as we go until eventually we have all the tools we need for EQN. But as far as the way they think and the backbone of the monsters, it's exactly the same system that we intend to use for EverQuest Next. And so in that respect, it will be very similar. But keep in mind that when you see it for the first time, like most of the systems that you've seen for the first time in this game, it ain't done. We're giving you a functional first glance, and then we're continuously growing it. We'll try to tell you where we're going and what the big picture is, but when you first get it, when you first see the monsters, they'll do a lot of well, right now inside the game they do follow me code, which if you're familiar with pathfinding is a real simple primitive form of pathfinding where basically they're locking on you and just following the terrain to get to you. We're also introducing real pathfinding into the game right now, and it'll be a lot more robust in thinking, but that's a good example of how this stuff will mature as it goes on. So at the beginning you might have like a wisp over ground is not particularly intelligent. It's not doing anything that's really creative. But as you go farther down into the dungeons or into the caves, the monsters will get more intelligent and do more clever things. And then, of course, we might even mess around with the wisps when we wrap back around and start doing more behaviors for them.
Yeah, the important thing to keep in mind is that the Storybrick system isn't a binary switch where it's on or it's off, and it's something that's built in stages. So that the initial implementation of combat is using Storybricks, driving the AI behind it, but it's the beginnings of that system. And when we get to the point where you'll be placing things down and putting literally the story bricks in the world that have the information that you want on them, and it's interacting with NPCs, that's much further down the road, because a lot of that requires a pretty robust interface for you guys to be able to use it effectively. We want it to be the same extent that the building tools are, where they're very robust, they're very dynamic, and Storybricks, the ultimate implementation of that is going to be on that level.
We definitely have some work to do on those tools before they show up in your hands.
Yeah.
So excuse me, Dr. Pepper. You'll see monsters in the world. You'll be fighting them. They'll be chasing you around and everything like that before you actually get the tools in your hands, because we'll be polishing and figuring out what doesn't work and fixing that before we launch the tools to you.
Cool deal. So here's a question for you. It was talked about, I believe, at SOE Live, and maybe not a little bit too much since then, about when you actually have the tools to set up an encounter on your claim, it'll give specific loot, based on the type of encounter and how difficult it is. But I was wondering if there's different ways to have different configurations where you'll get different types of prizes for different ways of completing, like beat the boss without losing anybody or anybody dying or anything like that. That's one type of prize, versus sneak in, steal the treasure solo, and sneak back out. That's a different type of prize, versus barely scrape by and barely beat the boss with one last person at the end, and that's like maybe a slight better prize for them, but everyone else gets kind of nothing. Stuff like that, or is it not going to be really that varied initially?
Well, I mean, those are fantastic ideas, and we've certainly talked about, you kind of think about how we build our systems, and they're meant to build off one another and tie in together. So we build things knowing that we want them to tie together in the future. And so, you see the kinds of PvP games that you can make now. That's the first level of that stuff, and you'll be able to make, in the future, more dynamic kinds of games, other types of games. And tying PvE stuff into that makes a lot of sense, so that you could set objectives and set rewards for meeting those objectives. We've got an achievement system coming in. Maybe it ties into some of that. So, certainly those ideas are the kinds of things we talk about doing down the road as more and more of these systems come online and we can tie them together. But it's a thing that's going to take some time to implement, and it'll start with the first iterations of these systems, and then as they get more robust and are tied in together, our desire certainly would be to see stuff like that, where you can get very precise about the kinds of rewards you give for different things.
Yeah, I believe we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll start out, of course, a lot more basic than that, but we'll get there. And all we really have to do is give you the abilities. and it'll show up in the world. It's kind of amazing what the community does all the time with even just the simple building tools. I can only imagine what will happen once they have game mastering tools. So I would imagine that some of that stuff will get very complex, and then you'll find out all the wonderful side of this business, which is QAing your product. When you realize, oh, I didn't know they could break it that way. And then welcome to our world.
Yes.
So I think we're going to move to another topic, which are kind of community-related questions. And actually, this was one we talked about. I think it was 2 or 3 shows ago, actually, kind of in depth. And Morgan, I think you were actually in chat. There's sort of some of us feel like now when you sort of log into Landmark, usually within an MMO, there's some reason to collect in an area with other people. You mentioned merchants don't exist, and they might not, and those sorts of town settlements. And sometimes it seems like you log in, there's no one around. And if you're a new player, is there any plans or ways that you're thinking about changing the sort of new experience to direct new players who don't know anyone else towards other groups of players? Because there's no kind of innate way to do that now unless you know the people that are there.
No, we're with you. There's supposed to be a hub town. There's a bunch of stuff that's supposed to go in around the hub on each island, and we just haven't done it. So there's bazaar stalls and crafting stations and all kinds of stuff. So there's essentially a little village that shows up around the hubs, and it's a place for players when they first show up in the game to be able to see hopefully other players and to be able to see opportunities. And then of course we'll have achievements that steer people around. Some of those achievements can be socially oriented so that people are encouraged to contact other players and be able to do different things. Excuse me. And then in addition to that, we're trying to set up the whole game so that you become aware of other people really rapidly through the showcase, through wandering around in the world, all those different things, so that you stumble on other people. It's supposed to be that way. We'll see how it works out, but I believe that as the game matures and all the different elements go in, I don't think that loneliness problem will be quite as pervasive.
Yeah, and the fact that resources are going to be moving deeper in the world will kind of encourage people to cooperate to get down to those resources efficiently.
Groups will be more necessary.
That's right, and there'll be adversaries down there that you'll have to overcome. So there'll be a lot to do in that regard. And like Dave said, our achievements are what we're really using to kind of set up an introductory experience. So it's going to guide you more than just a little list that you get now to like craft a pick and craft an axe and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's going to really tell you, it's going to suggest things for you to do to kind of work you into that progression. And social things can definitely be a part of that.
And that's all foundation for the Rosong stuff that we've talked about for EverQuest Next. So what we're doing is making sure that you can always find stuff that you're interested in.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you guys are doing that. I know it's really tough sometimes to balance that, creating interdependency and guiding people, but at the same time not frustrating them by, not giving them an easy direction right away. So, but in the same context of that last question, I know for EverQuest Next, you guys kind of have rallying calls as sort of big events that can draw people together and cause them to group up and, rely on each other. Do you guys have anything planned for Landmark that would be sort of like a big event that's going to, cause people to gravitate towards each other and cooperate?
No. Darren has dreams. We'll see what happens.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, other than your need to awaken the 12 sleeping gods that slumber deep beneath the
besides
surface,
that.
but aside from that, nothing really.
Darren, I don't mean to be mysterious, but Darren was like, well, we're testing everything else in Landmark. Why don't we test rallying calls? And I was like, well, that seems excessive and will require a lot of NPCs and stuff beyond what we normally can do. But it's an idea we can toy with later on down the line. I think actually what he was really aimed at was seeing if players could create rallying calls. But that's design we have not done. So there's no way we could guarantee anything like that. Currently, the answer is no. We're not looking to do those kinds of things in Landmark because ultimately what we're trying to do is give you all the different tools and stuff that we use to be able to build EverQuest Next so that you can build your own scenarios and build your own reasons for people to rally together and be able to do stuff. And we'll see how that goes. We'll feel it out as we go forward. If that's working out, we'll leave it alone because we'd love these worlds to be entirely your guys'. But if you need a poke in the ribs, we'll do that too.
Cool. So I think we're going to go one more with the community-related questions. And so this question is, there was talk about changing future contest structure. Is there any more information available about the contest structures?
Yeah, what do you want to know? Because, we know all of it.
Well,
I know there's obviously some very outspoken people in the community that had issues with things, and it was very early on in the development. So, what kind of things are you putting in place for future contests outside?
Right. Actually, I can address some of the stuff that I've seen on the forums because I was actually responding to forum threads about this today.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are concerned that the popularity vote will dominate, and that people that are organized as, say, I don't know, Lay Spring Academy or something? No, I'm just kidding.
So dead.
I'm just kidding. But individuals fear that these organized groups will somehow dominate the competitions and everybody else will be unable to succeed. Well, there's a bunch of counterpoints to that, one of which is you can't see the number of votes during the judging stuff, so you don't know how you're doing against everybody else. There are many, many thousands of players playing this game, and there are not that many people in a guild, so it's really unlikely that any single guild could do anything like that. In addition to that, there was a third counterpoint. I'm trying to remember what it was. But basically, it's really, really difficult for people to be able to swing. Oh, I remember what the other one was, which is basically when the players vote on this stuff, all they're really doing is raising the wheat out of the chaff. So that basically, when we look at it, we can take, like, say, the top 50 or 60 that the players have liked, because we know from watching the player studio, from watching the gallery, we know that these organized groups are not the dominant players on the top of the leaderboards. What's happened is people go into these areas, and when they upvote, what they're looking for is a pretty picture. They don't care who made it, but when they see a pretty picture, they're like, "Oh, that looks awesome! Upvote." And that's going to be the same case in the competitions too. Now, I might be wrong. We understand that we might be wrong about this. We think that we're right, but if we're wrong, we'll fix it.
An iterative process, just like everything else, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, exactly.
Cool.
Oh, and as far as the other stuff goes, as far as the competitions go, the idea is that we'll announce the competition. You guys can start tearing into it and building your contest entries. Then we'll go into a submissions phase, which is usually about a week, where you'll enter in. We give you a week because not everybody's available on a specific day. So we give you a week to enter your stuff. During that case, at that point, your claim is locked. As soon as you submit, your claim is locked, and you can no longer make any changes to it unless you unlock it. Okay? If you unlock it, you are automatically removed from the contest. Does that make sense? So then once we go into judging, your claim is still locked. The players all vote for that judging week. And when that's done, we look at that top X, whatever the X is that we decide is enough, but it's probably less than 500 or 600, like we've had in some of the competitions, and we can look at those X things and be able to make decisions really rapidly in a day, instead of it taking a week or 2 weeks for us to be able to find the time to go through each and every entry. So what we're doing is effectively we're relying on you guys to do the same kind of things that you do for our player studio submissions and everything like that, to essentially look at stuff and go, yeah, and that looks fantastic, let's upvote it, and then we can kind of look at that top list and be able to pick and choose from that. But we can pretty much guarantee that groups that are organized and put stuff together probably will find themselves in that pool. There's nothing wrong with that. All the individuals that have quality stuff will also be in that pool, and you'll see.
And I want to say on this whole note, I really appreciate and admire the job that you guys have done with administrating these contests, because I feel like from a third party, like watching in, it seems like there's so much conflict, because it's going to happen, of course, but I just want to let you guys know it really is cool to see how flexible you guys have been and understanding to a lot of the players that I sometimes think are very outspoken.
See now you guys, thank you. And see, what you guys didn't realize was that you were going to be playing a PvP building game. That's a joke. But yeah, that's kind of what the competitions are. It's player versus player building.
Yeah, I think it's
Perfect lead in to our next topic.
PvP.
PvP.
PvP. Building versus building.
Golf club. Lead in.
PvP.
Thank you. I'm done. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, next topic is going to be a couple PvP-related questions. My question, it's an EverQuest Next question. With the dynamic content of EverQuest Next that was described to us at SW Live, there's a lot of potential for direct conflict between players, whether or not you can directly attack someone. And how does that affect your thinking on PvP restrictions?
You will be bummed to know that we're not going to talk about EQ and PvP very much.
Except to say,
yeah. Well, like the debate rages on about overland PvP and what we're going to do with it and stuff like that. Obviously, there's some stuff that we're doing with the landmark structure, which is unique because everybody's got a claim, so it's really easy for us to set up PvP arenas. That will not be the case in EQN. So clearly, PvP is going to be treated differently in EQN than it is in landmark. And I've seen some of the really early designs. Those schools or colleges or whatever we were calling them.
Hush you.
They're really cool. Really, really cool. We can't talk about them, but they're awesome.
Yes.
And so there's... Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. But there's some really original thinking behind PvP that we had very, very early on, and we haven't touched since then. When we get to it, we're hoping to give you a very different flavor of PvP than what you've encountered in other MMOs. I mean, I've played just about every variant of it. I mean, the one that I liked the best was Realm versus Realm in Dark Ages of Camelot, but we are not doing that. So, you'll see when we get to it, but it shouldn't be the same as what you're used to. Like everything else we do.
And like everything else we do,
I'm just happy that you're thinking about it in a different way, as along the side of a completely different kind of content surrounding it. That was really the question. I feel like you answered it well. Thank you.
Cool. Dodged the bullet.
Awesome. All right. So, because of the amount of flexibility in the classes, is there any way to be able to tell, which opponents are the more opportune ones to go for, like by their silhouette or by what they're wearing, or even by what weapon they have out, or is it basically going to be kind of everybody's a dangerous threat? You really can't tell by that.
We are not going to talk about that for EQ Next, certainly. But I think it would, be safe to say that when you're in Landmark, for example, the ability to mix and match different types of armor that have different benefits to you, to use the keywords that tie into the accessories that you choose and things like that. I think that you'll be able to see a variety of builds, but certain ones that will stand out and be recognizable and that you'll start to develop tactics for and that sort of thing. We don't want it to feel completely random where you can never tell what somebody is going to be doing in battle and things like that. But at the same time, we want it to be flexible enough that you can have some originality and some things. You might be able to come up with something that somebody else with that's a slightly different take on a build that somebody else has, and you'll be able to surprise them. So it's going to be that line of figuring things out as you go and as you play.
But we're not doing levels,
right?
So we don't have conning, which means we don't have colors or their names are not specific colors over their head to show you what threat they are, and so you're going to have to learn. Because we don't have levels, what that means is the world is essentially open at all times. So the areas are not level locked. So what you're going to have to learn is what things are about your speed. Like if you're starting out and you don't have very many capabilities, do you really want to go run over and take on dragons? You can. It might not be a long battle, but you can. And so you have to decide what your skill level is. Plus. Intelligence of the monsters will have a lot to do with how dangerous they are. Dumb monsters are easier. Well, not always. You could have a really, really big monster, like a rhino is not very intelligent.
They asked about PvP, Why are you giving away all the good PvE
Oh,
secrets?
I thought they were talking about PvP.
Come on.
Bonus
Hey.
question.
The Dr. Pepper.
If there's a sword in hand, it's a good question.
A topic we thought Dave was going to have more knowledge on. I think Steve, you could just sit aside. Steve's going to answer the rest.
Sure.
Well, you're the beauty, right? You're the beauty of the picture. That's what we're going.
Clearly, I didn't even think it needed to be said.
Exactly.
All right. Now I'm totally.
As long as I had my hair. But now I'm just not.
The hair was pretty great.
I got to make a shameless plug. I do want to talk with you about PvE. There's actually a discussion we had at E3 2012 or 2013 about EQ Next, about fighting a tree in various different ways. So let's talk about that on another show on another time. We'll talk about
Fighting
that.
a tree in different ways. Wow. I wish I knew about this conversation.
I don't even remember this conversation.
Fighting
Yeah,
a
that's
tree in
something
different.
like
I'll-
How many
I'll
different ways
remind
is there
you.
to fight a tree?
Tons. It's a lot to talk about, actually.
I'm sure you've written a 20-page doc on how to fight trees.
Actually,
I'll
I
just- I'll
did.
yeah, there we go. Okay. All right.
Of course there is.
The thing about
All right.
trees is the park is always worse than their
It's taken that turn.
Oh gosh.
Wow.
It's late in a Friday night. I think it's time
Yeah.
for beers, huh? I do have a question about the community. It's going to tie community and PvP in Landmark. So a question I have is: we see a lot of these building competitions. We see players playing against each other in a sort of like creative way. But will there be formal competition set up by you guys for things like PvP, where there will be prizes and stuff?
We really want to. I mean, we would love to do that. There's a whole bunch of tournament ladder stuff that we need to support. We definitely want to have leaderboards, all of those things. We just essentially ran out of spare priority. So like, priority is a resource in our game, and there's never enough of it. So after the new year, we'd like to wrap back around and do more stuff with PvP. We certainly will have to do a lot more to support EQN. And it would be awesome if we could set up mechanisms by which you guys could sponsor run your own tournaments.
Sure. That was kind
so
of in
that
play.
stuff would be cool.
Because that was kind of in play. I mean, we run something called Friday Night Fight Club and Landmark Battlegrounds, and there were a couple of other ones as well. Shout out to the community members who were doing those. And yeah, I think things have been kind of crazy because they've kind of been changing the players direct, or they've been changing the insider program now it's play direct. So we're still kind of in this gray area of where it would all turn out. But I do think that's a great point. I think we will have to take up those priorities from you guys and make sure that we make those in the community. So
It's been amazing what you guys are doing without any structures at all.
Yeah.
So like all we have to do is add a little bit.
I always loved the old EQ best of the best tournaments, and
Oh, yeah.
to see players do some stuff like that would be really awesome.
God, I forgot about those.
That was great.
Long
time
time.
to Google that.
Yeah, I've been interested to see, I know you guys aren't talking EQ and PvP, but, something in the way of reviving those old, arenas where people could just get in and duel it out, and then maybe have some, with the new Storybricks AI, having some sort of lasting impact. You gain some reputation and people act differently because of the way you've battled other notable heroes. So, but those were just some things we were talking about, kind of joking around and theory crafting like we do on this show. It's our favorite part of this show. But
I can't reveal detail, but I can say this. I absolutely know that the design team is working really hard to make sure that PvP is an integral part of the world. So it will
You made my night.
influence stuff. It will influence stuff.
Yeah, the Storybricks AI makes it possible that NPCs will wet themselves as a great champion approaches. So that's you'll see it spread over the wetness. It's quite impressive.
We need a wand that does that too, so we just run around making everybody wet themselves.
I knew
The
we
wand
needed
of wetness.
Steve's answer.
Yeah. The wand of wetness will be an epic drop, I think.
Gio really wants to make friends.
So that would be a different kind of wand.
We're getting up into our normal Q&A session here. We did have a question posed kind of in PvP by one of the people in the chat, and so I'll throw that up in our last couple minutes here before we dive into the Q&A with the chat. But one of the players in the chat asked, how long are players expected to survive a PvP battle in Landmark? Seconds, minutes, kind of a pacing issue or a question?
Well, you can see how it is in PvP right now. And there's an expected lifespan in PvP. If it's too long, it just feels like you can't do anything. In fact, it doesn't take very long at all before you start to feel like all your blows are just love taps. They're not doing anything. So you kind of have to be able to destroy your opponent pretty quickly, or it just doesn't feel like combat. Because combat is generally, unless you're in a Bruce Willis movie, combat is generally pretty lethal and quick. And so we tend to embrace that side of the fence, but we're not finalized on that. Certainly not minutes.
Yeah, I mean, like literally the testing of combat and playing through it is something we do every single day. Like we're working on like new armors and items and weapons and things like that. So we're always testing those out, and we're very much experimenting with the pace of combat and how long we want certain things to take. You know, is this more fun if it's a bit slower and more tactical? Should we increase it, and then you get a more fast-paced kind of feel to it? So it's something that we're iterating on literally all the time. I'm not exaggerating at all. We sit in a big area, all the designers, we're trying things out, and we're saying, hey, connect to my server, I changed some variables here, let's try this out now. What if we change this ability up so that it's a snare instead of a knockback, and different things like that. It's happening literally all the time. So
You just made me so jealous.
We're always thinking about that stuff and trying and that PvP stuff will carry over into PvP and the feel of combat there. So it all ties in together, and it's something that we work really hard to try and do. And you've really only seen the first iteration of it, but it's something we keep on doing all the time.
Yep. It's really all about the feel of it.
Mm-hmm.
Steve's answer was great, but it's all about the feel. You have to feel like you're effective, but it doesn't. It can't take too long, and it can't take too little. If it's too little, then basically you're just getting one-shotted from everywhere. And if it's too long, you don't feel like you're doing anything. So there's a sweet spot in the middle, and pretty much every game that does PvP is kind of forced into that sweet spot because nobody likes the other ones.
There's so much to talk about on that topic.
With the exception of EVE Online, which is an exception to all rules.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
one
hopefully-
spreadsheet might do more damage than another spreadsheet. So it's very, I kid.
Not too far off. Every battle is a cost-benefit analysis in that game.
I love there's one of the people who works on Player Studio, Rick Reynolds, is a diehard
Just gonna talk about
EVE
Rick.
Online player, and I just love cornering him in the hallways, especially when I know that some event has happened in that game, and I'm like, dude, what happened? And he tells me this story that is the most gripping thing that you'd hear. It's as if he's been out there on the lines fighting
runs
it.
a massive guild,
Yeah.
which I won't name, and he's lost Titans. Like
Yes.
he's lost multiple Titans.
We came down
Know anything
to
about that game? That's wow.
It's crazy, but it's some of the most thrilling stuff that you'll talk about because it's player-driven conflict,
Yeah.
and that's what it comes down to. A lot of the things that we're trying to do in EverQuest Next will be about how players interact and how they cause change in the world and what that does to the community and how people react to one another. That's the kind of feel that we want to capture, is that sense of, dude, we are the ones out there changing things in this world. And that turns the story over to you, that turns the world over to you, and that's what we want to do, is those are the kind of stories that last. You know, it's not about, oh, I did this quest and I saved this NPC and now the village is safe. Like, none of that stuff really matters. At the end of the day, it's about, me and my buddies did this against you and your buddies and we won and you didn't, but next time you're coming back for us. And like all that kind of stuff, the story writes itself. And that's the kind of game that we're trying to make.
Memories.
Beautiful.
What we do is we make memories for a living. That's what entertainment is.
Memories.
Well,
So,
without that.
quick question about. So I just did something with my friends, and we beat you and your friends. How soon till I could show them with SOE mode how much I think I'm cooler than them?
After the new year, we don't have a date for it, but it's been on every month's release since Alpha, and it just
That's
keeps
why I
getting pushed off
asked.
the bottom. Well, it just keeps getting pushed off the bottom because, as you can see from our other priorities, we're focused on the core game. And we love SOE mode. You know that I'm a personal champion for SOE mode, or I wouldn't have made those damn frog-like faces online.
We have a camera right here, Dave. I think that you can give them a preview of SOE mode.
But
Nice.
I mean, we love it. We think it's great, and we know that there's role players and machinima folks out there that are just dying to get back into the game. But we're hoping to do that after the beginning of the year.
It was funny when we went to. I came with Vel, and we went to visit you guys at your studio, and we were rounding a corner, and I think we were going to go talk to Mr. Reynolds for the player studio stuff, and we pull in, and we kind of like come in, and he's like, he looks around, turns around, and he's like, hold on, and you see EVE Online on the screen. He's like, oh no, and he turns around, he's like, I'm sorry guys. Real loss. It was the most hilarious thing that we had ever seen. He was
Yeah.
pretty great.
He's had massive victories, and he's had some just epic lost stories.
Yes.
Wow.
Serious monetary.
People
effective
put
loss.
massive cash into that game.
Yeah.
Massive.
So I have a question from a good friend of mine, LK. He asked, given all the talk about PvP, I have to ask, what percentage of the gamer population is PvP versus PvE that like you guys are aware of?
On Landmark?
Yeah.
Well, it's 100% PvP because there is no PvE yet. So
Oh, true.
it's 100% PvP.
I think
Between
maybe
builders and PvP, PvP is a very small percentage.
I think the
Very
question
small
maybe is like for marketing things, like based on your guys' own research, like how much do you see of shift one way or the other in your target audience, and maybe what are you guys aiming for as far as systems playing into the game?
No, we put in PvP first because we wanted to test PvP first, not because we thought it was going to be the most popular feature for Landmark. We think that eventually PvP has a shot at being a really big feature for Landmark, but not when we start out with a building community. I mean, nobody thought it was just going to go, woohoo, everybody's going to play PvP now. And we have people that are really creatively minded, and they want to build magnificent things, and that doesn't necessarily dovetail with going to beat on somebody's head. And so, I'm just saying. So when we get to PvE and people start coming in because they're starting to seek adrenaline, because they want to go out and slay monsters and get loot and everything like that, then those people will play that until they start to get a little bit tired of it, or they're not getting new challenges, which will hopefully never happen, but just in case. And then there's always PvP. So as the game matures and as people become more experienced with the combat mechanics, PvP is a natural outlet. We started with PvP because we didn't have monsters yet, and we wanted to be able to test some of the foundation elements. And that's the only reason why it went in first.
Sorry for failing your question, LK. I feel so ashamed.
What?
But I didn't. I guess I didn't understand what he was asking. But yeah, that's a great. I think what Vel said was probably about right. And it is a really cool point that you guys bring up. And I want to say, as somebody who loves PvP, thank you, because not enough people look out for us.
Yeah, well, we're tired of making games where PvP is a band-aid at the end.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that we had the foundations in early.
Cool.
Yeah, and just personally, I think it's a lot of fun to be able to, build a claim, put a game on there, and engage with that with, this group of people that are in it for the same fun you are, rather than having it be this random thing where, some jackass is running up to you just because he wants to gank you and ruin your day. So it's
Stop calling me a jackass.
That's what's driven a lot of people away from different types of PvP in the past. And while this is certainly just the first step in Landmark PvP, there's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun playing games on flames and stuff like that. So I think it's
you guys have the Ashen Order book out already, which gives us that love of the monks back. Have you guys thought about putting hand-to-hand combat in as a weapon type early on, right now, since it's one of those you don't need to make any items for it, maybe? Rekmo asked that question kind of. Has any work been done on hand-to-hand combat?
I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
No.
And the reason why is because we're focused on making sure that itemization is really tight, and itemization is not typically your hands. So we haven't done the hand-to-hand stuff because we're focused on more of putting stuff into your hands.
Yeah, I think there will certainly be hand-to-hand combat where we've talked about monks and stuff like that before.
Yeah.
But it will still be. Rather than just bare-fisted brawling, it'll be, a cestus or things like that, fist wraps, so that we can tie into the itemization and still make that a part of it. So there's ways to do that will come in down the line. But even with the hand-to-hand stuff, you still have to do animations, and in a lot of ways, because it's not about a big flashy sword or a big shield or something like that, the animation really has to sell that style of combat. So it's something that still takes a lot of resources to do. It's not free by any means.
Yeah, and I apologize if I misspoke a little bit. When, like, for instance, itemization of hand wraps would work really well. But that wasn't what I thought you meant by hand-to-hand. I thought you were talking about hand-to-hand styles, like combat styles, which is a completely different set of animations and honestly mechanics. And so that is not being embraced right now. Adding monk hand wraps would be as easy as making a sword, yes. Except for the animations.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have slap fights. Just slap
there you
another.
go.
Well, speaking about slap fights, Cody
Just
actually
like we do in
asked,
the office. Yeah. Sorry.
I was saying, speaking about slap fights, I could see that in Landmark, and it's kind of a form of PvP. So, will there be, will there be any other forms of PvP that aren't, going to be strictly adhering to the armor weapons? Like maybe he asks like Quidditch, maybe, something along those lines.
Well, if you guys make it, yes, but we can't make Quidditch. We get sued out of existence. But I understand what you're saying. You're basically saying non-combat PvP.
Right.
And sure, why not?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we throw on the phrase indirect PvP about a lot of different things because the whole rallying call infrastructure is about pushing things in a certain direction that maybe some other people want to push in another direction. So you're indirectly competing against one another.
Well, you can imagine things like races, platformers. So you can set up platforms and compete for times. There's a lot of different games that you can imagine doing. Hell, back in Alpha, people were playing Monopoly. Remember?
Yeah, Voxopoly, I believe it was.
Yeah,
called.
Exactly, Voxopoly.
Shout out. Yeah.
I have a question for Steve. Can you talk a little bit about how you envision, as you guys are designing the lore and the background and the story in EverQuest Next, you must be thinking a little bit about what kind of roles players may choose to play. Can you walk us through one or maybe two of those ideas, if you have time? Like, say, your idea of one type of player that comes into the game and how you would expect them to interact with the lore. Just like a 5 minutes or even 1 minute in the life of this kind of character that you guys have talked about.
Well, I think, again, keep in mind that a lot of the fiction that we're doing, the backstory, the history, and things like that are about creating this rich backdrop for you as a player to tap into. But one of the direct ways that you'll be doing that in the game, a lot of it is going to be about the organizations that you align with in the world. So there's people like the Ashen Order, for example, that advance a certain set of values, that care about a certain set of resources. And by going around and interacting with these organizations, you'll some classes are tied into those organizations. Obviously, with the Ashen Order, you would have monks tied in. Maybe there's certain other classes we're developing that are tied into the Ashen Order as well. So you can think of different organizations as kind of umbrellas, and those have stories in the world. And by choosing to align with certain organizations or opposing them, that'll help drive your gameplay and point out things to you through Rosong that you'll be interested in. So as you gravitate towards certain groups in the world that you like, the Ashen Order, the Knights of Truth, maybe you want to be a bad guy and go with the Bloodsaber or something like that. That'll point you to certain bits of content in the world, and then you can go out and do those things. So it's by having, the emergent content builds on that. So it's about us taking those organizations and the things that are driving them, putting them into the world, this world that's full of different types of resources that these groups would be competing over, and then you, as a player, taking sides in that and being able to choose the kinds of encounters that you want to pursue, the kinds of conflicts that you want to fuel. So that's a way that story will come alive through these groups in the world, and your relationship will develop with these groups in a far more complex way than just, I'm increasing a linear faction bar kind of thing. It's about the type of gameplay that you want to do, the choices that you make in the world, how those choices align with these groups, and there'll be repercussions for that. They'll react to the way that the choices that you're doing, how it's affecting their influence in the world. Because remember, everything is about influence, and these groups want to increase their influence in the world. And if you help them, it's going to elicit one reaction. If you oppose them, it's going to elicit another.
And our intent is that affects all types of players, including crafters.
Cool.
Dun, dun,
So
dun.
Police are
have
coming for me, guys. Sorry.
we have a question here from Diggs. Will we have weapon versions of the tools like axes and sickles? And I think he's asking about being able to use the crafting tools as weapons, which I always thought would have been a great idea. I mean, you can take down a 100-foot tree in 5 whacks. That thing's powerful.
Maybe trees are just really wimpy.
Yeah.
Maybe they're made of soggy paper.
You haven't read his
Sorry.
20-page document yet, apparently.
That's right. I'm sure it specifies that as in Nero's 20-page doc.
In the new NORAD.
No, it's a pretty cool
Yeah,
question.
we've talked about weapons picks as weapons and stuff like that. And the answer is currently no. But I'll be honest, the conversation was so long ago, I don't remember the reason. I'd have to go ask.
Because you didn't have weapon mechanics yet.
Yeah, I don't know. We talked about it a lot because we were thinking, well, it's an axe. Why can't you kill stuff with it? But currently, I think the answer is no. Building tools are building tools, and combat weapons are combat weapons.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is because of the supporting systems behind it. Your axe doesn't have combat stats. Your pick doesn't have combat stats, and those stats are very specific. Now we could start baking those in to picks and stuff like that, but right now they don't have that, so they can't be used that way.
Yeah, and I think I imagine the tooltip that would pop up when you inspected a pick that was both a weapon and a tool, and it would be like, here's a whole set of abilities for the weapon, and here's a whole set of abilities for the. It would kind of go crazy. So it's a little cleaner to keep them separate.
It would be
That's
cool
not to say we can't use the models for certain tools as weapons and stuff like that. I mean, that's totally possible. But.
It would
Hey,
be
or
cool
even
to
just
see just some
aesthetic
sort of-
versions.
Yeah, just some generic, when you enter combat, if you don't have a weapon, you get some generic basic stats if you happen to have a crafting weapon on you.
So you
But
knock
yeah,
some poor guy
feature
onto the
stuff.
ground and you're mining him. You see loot bags flying off his body. That's pretty
Sounds like a
cool.
horror movie. Yeah.
Yeah, come on.
That sounds awesome.
That is pretty awesome, actually.
I want brain parts.
You got a missing
just-
arm because
I just
Dave
run
harvested
through-
it from your corpse.
Hizzy takes over our game.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be an interesting Clash landmark versus H1Z1.
Oh my God! I want to play in our engine. I want to play DCO, Hizzy, and PlanetSide. I want to play all three of those games in our Destructible World engine. Oh my God!
Oh,
Hey,
It's now called Hizzy all the time. You can't say anything but Hizzy.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
H1C1. I'm gonna get in trouble.
It's only the Hizzy.
well, I have a question about immersion that has to do with maybe Morgard, you have an opinion about this. I played a game recently called Shadows of Mordor where they had this thing called the Nemesis system, and every opponent that you face, it seems I think that they were procedurally generated almost, where their textures were very unique to that orc. Is there any way that you guys are planning on maybe allowing different monsters to have maybe different textures between each other or look a little bit different but be the same mob?
Now, what you're doing is how games slip. But I agree, the Nemesis system is really freaking cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a neat system by which you get unique enemies and they kind of become personalized to you and you start to identify with them. That would be a really cool thing for EQN. We haven't built it in, clearly, because those are some of the only ideas we didn't have back when. But it's the kind of thing we'd love to do in our game, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's whenever you look at stuff like that, you always have to look at, that's in a single player experience, you can do certain things. How does that translate when you have a jillion people doing that same kind of thing? And so there's a whole another set of implications of systems like that in a single player game they just didn't have to consider. So there's a lot of cool ideas. As soon as that game came out, we were talking about it in the studio and how cool some of that stuff was. So if we can translate some of those ideas and it doesn't impact the rest of everything that we do, there's certainly some cool things we'd love to steal from that.
You may have to settle for the other 1,000 original ideas we have.
Yes.
Cool.
But yeah.
I was just asking because it is interesting as we come into the dawn of I don't know, whatever. So we're coming into what we hope is going to soon be EverQuest Next. I like how I had to draw that out. It's there's so many great topics, but for me, it's like one of what I would think is really one of the first next-gen MMOs that I've ever really thought about or seen actually being made. So all these topics that everybody's asking in chat and all the questions we have, it's really just unique that we can ask these and that there is a possibility that it could actually happen. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, I guarantee you guys have given us ideas that we have definitely implemented. We've done a lot, and the feedback and the process through alpha and closed beta has been, I know you've heard me say this a million times, but seriously, this is like the coolest development process I've ever been involved in all of my time in gaming. We're constantly getting feedback on a 24/7 basis. And unlike with a live situation where, like EQ or EQ2 Live, where the game already exists and it is what it is, we're still making it up. So when you're giving us the feedback, it's at the right time. It's like I always tell our teams, like, don't bring me in at the end so that I can just be the guy that says I hate it and then you're screwed. Bring me in the early parts where we can get my 2 bits, and that way everything's hunky-dory. And the same is true here. So you guys are able to put your 2 bits in now, which means that the game ends up being what you actually want. And we love it. The process is great.
That time.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to have to call this pretty quick because I think our hour was up 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's beer o'clock.
It didn't happen. Your clock's wrong.
Coming and answering questions. I mean, we've had a really good time here. You guys have been, great fun. We hope to have you back definitely in the future. When you guys have more upcoming things that you want to talk about and share with the community. This is a great show to do it on, and we love kind of theory crafting with you guys. And just like you said, this show, or this game being something that's in open development and us coming in at the right time, that's what this show is all about for us. We like to come in as a community and, talk about these things and discuss and theory craft. So that way, all of our feedback as a community is really purposeful and, has some good insight. So we do definitely want to thank you all. Thank you both for coming in. And I'll let the other guys go around kind of and say their farewells, and we'll let you guys depart. And I think we might hang around after you guys leave and answer some more questions and theory craft for people. But thank you guys so much, and I'll let the other guys say goodbye, and thanks for coming.
Cool.
Well, I am absolutely, silent.
Come
I'm
on,
going to jump in.
it's the personal farewells now. We want to hear this. This has been built up.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you guys, once again, it's amazing having you guys on here. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. We'll definitely have to talk more about the tree battle discussion, because that was actually, it was E3 2013 for sure.
Forest. There is trouble with the trees.
And definitely awesome. We'd love to have you back on sometime, and looking forward to seeing how you guys finish out the year here. I'm really excited for the features to finish out the year here. So amped.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to kill stuff.
It will. Big updates in December. It's going to blow your mind.
And that's why we're going weekly, because we're screwed if we don't go weekly. Lots of stuff.
Yeah. I've been an EverQuest fan since '99, and I really appreciate you guys coming on. I right now kind of actually feel like an MMOer without a home, so I really hope that soon or sometime we will hear some next news as far as dates at some point in the next
we'll
period.
get to open beta with Landmark, and then we'll make you sick of EQN.
Nice.
Yeah, but again, thanks for being here.
Yeah. And of course, a show like this couldn't be possible if you guys didn't give us the opportunity to be involved in this process, because this is a show about theory crafting. And, theory crafting doesn't matter if nobody's listening to your theories. So thanks for coming on again. It's been a pleasure having you guys, and throw it over to Tsagh.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys coming here, not boycotting this channel and demanding it was on another one. I'd like, I hope that in about, 3 months through the new year, we can hopefully get together again on one of these other guys' channels and do this again. Thank you so much for really, especially for earlier today, giving me some feedback on the topics that we were thinking about talking about, so that we could have such a good discussion. That was really important. So thank you. Thank you guys very much for coming. Nice to have a conversation outside of a bar. But,
no, it's not.
but we will have more bar conversations soon.
These are tears, not water. This is not water. It's tears because I'm sad about beer.
All right. Thanks, guys. We're gonna take a 2 or 3 minute break here and come back and talk to people in the chat and close out the show. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks.
This is a team effort, and it's really obvious when we go through stuff like those workshops that I don't know if you guys looked at that Karen stuff and wondered about like what it would be cool with stuff actually running around on it and doing fights and stuff around it, but I did. And the ogre stuff is even cooler, and what we're doing with the starter templates. The starter templates are looking phenomenal, and it's all because you guys care about the game every bit as much as we do, and that's awesome, and is one of the reasons why this development process is second to none. So we appreciate your guys' time and efforts. Shows like this are how we stay on the map, and we really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
See you soon.
Thank you
See you
guys
later.
for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Adios.
So, bye, everybody.
So, cool. Well, then we should probably.
We're back.
Sweet.
Hello.
Doing it live.
We're back.
Awesome.
All right. Sorry about that delay with people leaving a Skype call. We have to, reset everything.
Yeah. So we have Steve and Dave are now sucked into the black abyss of Switch.
They're back in their vault. They are sealed away for.
What are you talking about? They're at the SOE cellar. They're drinking right now. They're at the, I think Brass calls it the third building. No, it's the fifth building, the third office, something like that. It's the other place that she goes at the end of the day for meetings and stuff with beer.
I mean, we went to SOE. We went to their headquarters. I've also been to a couple of other, Turbine being one of them. And I mean, these people were like, "We'll whip out tequila on Friday." It's like 4:59. They're like, "Yep, it's about time." Bam, tequila right on the desk. I mean, so gaming companies, if you like drinking and you like video games, I mean, it's an obvious choice. Get right into that profession if you can.
Oh, I used to drink an afternoon beer when I was at the indie studio last year. We're doing a level design.
Such a gentleman.
I actually started. Well, never mind. I'm just shut up there.
Well,
so
that was
I'm
a really great.
I'm going to, over the next week, I'm going to start something new that I'm going to need help with from people maybe that I'm talking to here or from in the chat. I'm building a Q&A and video timestamp database. So I'm going to transcribe what we just had with Dave and Steve, the Q&A, and I'm going to start going back through things that we've had over the last year and a half, and I'm going to create every question. So who the question was addressed to, what the question was, what the answer was, a link to the video with a timestamp, and some tags for type of content, so that we can end up with this kind of database that we all put together. I'm going to set it up so people can enter this kind of wiki style, create their own entries. They say if Neuro wants to go through some interview that he had and go through, if Velix and Viz want to go through, if they have a guest on Lorgasm, want to add theirs, like question by question, so that we can sort, we can look, and a way that we can compile real quotes. So it's going to take some time, it's going to take some coding effort, but I'm hoping by the end of the week to have the system set up so that we can, as a community, just start building this database. What do you guys think about that?
Do you know how to code?
I played MUDs for years and years and years. If you don't know any coding to play a MUD, you die. That's what it's all text input, writing scripts, and I also nearly completed a minor in computer science in college. I've got enough that I could bumble my way through tutorials and read up and figure things out, and there are lots of helpful people.
You have too many skills, though, Tsagh. I think you're like a vigilante or something.
Codes. We do have some. I want to let this know for the people that are still hanging around with us after the developers have left. We have some pretty cool items we want to give away. I believe Phantom X, he might be able to show you a sneak peek of one of the things that we're going to be giving away here in a raffle. And we have a couple small items too. But yes, we have an SOE Live loot card, $35. From SOE Live 2014. So we're going to do a raffle for that pretty shortly, but I wanted to let everybody know so you can stick around and get your name in there for it to enter the raffle and, win some of these prizes. And this is something we're going to try and do a little more in the future when we get to our Q&A sections, maybe throw some of these out there while we're answering questions with you guys after our normal shows. So, but thanks everybody for coming so far. It's been great, and, I mean, wow, like all that information. There was quite a few nuggets in there. I mean, with PvP and talking about the things that they want to do with PvE, and especially after they get to the end of this year and they kind of get those core systems in, their goals of looping back around, like Dave said multiple times, and picking up some of these rougher systems and starting to refine things. It looks, to be like a lot more activity in Landmark than, and ramping into EverQuest Next than we've seen so far. And I don't know how many times we've talked about it on this show before, but everybody is kind of getting this feeling that we might finally be getting into that stage where, content is just kind of coming a little bit quicker, and more actual mechanics and things to do are going to be entering the game. So it looks like it's the beginning of a really exciting time, and I know the developers seemed a little more hyped than usual, as they're kind of turning away from bugs and focusing more towards, getting in core systems that will let us see the whole picture of the game that they want us to see. So
Yeah.
I don't know, what are some of your other guys' take away from this interview today?
When he was talking about how they readjust stats on their own and then, tell each other to check out their own individual build of it to see how it's been balanced, man, I'm super jelly. I want to be able to do that. And that's the sort of control and the tools and stuff that I really want. And I know that's the sort of stuff that's probably always going to stay in-house, but to me, that's really like the nitty-gritty sorts of things that I really need to truly be able to make a campaign and a gameplay experience on my claim that's specific to the style and specifications I want. If I want to tune all of gameplay to feel basically the exact speed and pacing of like Quake 2, for example, or Quake 3 for the one Q3 DM17 or whatever I think Catchy made, that would be perfect. I would love to be able to even reconfigure the weapons to be able to have the exact same like functionality, relative damage, item pickups in a very similar way. That's the kind of modability I'm really hoping we get with Landmark someday.
I mean, I think that it should definitely be an option. But like you said, it's probably one of those someday things. But speaking of nuggets, let's talk about he was saying schools and colleges, and when we were talking about PvP.
Gosh. I'll chime in right now on this.
That was one of those moments.
It's something that I'm like doing with one of the cultures in my tabletop game. I'm kind of designing my own system, but yeah, one of the races basically has, it's organized all around combat and warfare, and there's all these different schools, involved, and everybody there's these different reputations, and people are known by what school they come from, and what kind of achievements they've accomplished as a warrior in combat. So it kind of instantly gave me thoughts when he kind of leaked that little tidbit that PvP might have some types of these things where maybe you actually, there's groups, there's little guilds or something, not necessarily guilds that you have, but little groups or schools or things that people get to band together and duel each other and have little mini tournaments, and then these accolades actually affect the way NPCs look at you. I mean, that quote, what NPCs will be wetting their pants when a crazy champion comes, that was awesome to hear, because it's been way too long since a game has actually put, player versus player accomplishment, combat accomplishments as something actually valuable and core to the gameplay. I don't think, maybe Tsagh's kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything. He might know of some games that have possibly done this, but as far as, mainstream MMOs, I don't think this is something that's ever really been done well before. I think, Terra had maybe a little bit branched off in making your PvP accomplishments worthwhile and doing something, and the ability to kind of govern an area of the region of the world. But other than that, and I don't even know how well that was executed. I didn't play it that long, but
I thought that was the goal of Warhammer Online, actually, was that you could progress through PvP or PvE if you wanted to. But I didn't play it.
Notice he said
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Warhammer Online didn't do so hot.
Man.
Well,
Warhammer's
Warhammer was great if you started like the day it launched, or not the day, but if you started playing Warhammer late, because everything was this like ongoing group experience in the zone. Trying to level up through the zones without a whole bunch of other people around you in Warhammer was so bad that nobody was there to help you. So all the people that were with groups had blues and purples through the whole thing, and you had nothing.
I don't know. I actually played the first day. I mean, WoW was, I think, around like at the same time, right? And I was just like, uninstall, go back to WoW. So, personal opinion there. But I mean, the whole colleges thing, that's crazy. I think that's kind of cool. And that leads, there's so much that can happen from that concept. Or schools, like I mean, even individual classes, like you could have like different rogue schools, you know, different paths. I guess it would almost be like a talent tree, where basically you have the ability to learn different skills that might have the same content, like same purpose, but different ways that they achieve those purposes, and that is going to be really cool because I think that it's going to be much less like the BS that I find when I log into a game, pick 15, pick my 30 skill points, and then I'm like, oh, I don't like those, and I just hit delete, and it's so unimmersive. So if they have these schools, it will make it so that there is this immersive process in getting your talents, getting your different variations, and maybe then like losing them would be a little bit more difficult, and I think that's pretty great.
I could see actually a lot of ways for variations and differences. This is one of those things from the Lore Languages document I wrote. The idea that learning something from kind of the perspective of a different language, gives you kind of a different approach at it. Like, you do one language, one culture, their way of assessing a strike is you're trying to, whip your arm as quickly as possible to make as much impact as you can. Where another culture, the way they think about it is, where you're trying to hit, you want to hit maybe about 2 or 3 inches past that target, and they aren't even thinking about like the velocity as the main focus of it. They're more focused on the precision of it. So different languages essentially being the gateway to different versions of the same technique. So we have further customization with each skill.
And I wonder how in depth it could be. Would it be that certain races can only be a part of certain schools, or are all I'm sure. I feel like if it's that in depth, eventually that will be the case. So that kind of plays even into what we were talking about before of will certain races be able to only get certain abilities. So this is all really, really good stuff. I think Scott, you're muted, by the way.
Yeah, I am. What is that on? What is that on Evercast pulling a Tamlin?
Yes, it is. I'll take a drink.
No, I was saying all I can say from sitting here is that they need to get all these other systems in so we can get to open beta so that we can get to EverQuest next.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm kind of excited that they're taking a step back from doing some of these temporary things and wanting to get more of the actual complete things for the future in, because we've gotten a taste of everything, and I think now it's time to start pushing towards that finished product, the end goal. They don't, obviously we've seen that the population of Landmark hasn't necessarily made any significant growth recently, so I would expect that in order to continue growing the community of the game, to start pushing it forward a little bit more. That's, I don't know. It's also my personal
Now,
personal.
did I mishear? Did Dave say that they hadn't started working on the rallying calls system yet? Did I mishear that?
For Landmark.
They don't have anything in there to support that.
No, I mean
Darren wants it in Landmark, and they haven't agreed to start working on it yet. But they have. My interpretation was that they've definitely worked on it for EQ Next.
I mean, this whole concept it's really important to the game structure. I want to know what you guys think about the fact that right now the majority of the community does not want to be disturbed when it comes to their building. A lot of them really just want to be on their claim. They don't want any outside influence. They don't want monsters. A lot of people don't want monsters. A lot of people don't want, and that are currently playing the game I'm talking about, don't want monsters. They don't want to deal with NPCs and currency. They just want to get stuff for free. So we're talking about mobs coming in, rallying calls. Like, these are all things that are going to turn Landmark less into a 3D modeling program and more into a game. And I just, where do you guys stand on this? How do you think that this is going to change the future outcome of Landmark?
I mean,
it's actually going to cause an economy to. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on, but I really want to say it's going to actually cause an economy to exist. It's actually going to cause there be a reason for builders to interact with people outside of building. And if they want to just stay on their build and keep on building and not have to go anywhere else, they have to find some reasonable way to compensate the community. Either their build is so awesome that people are just throwing dollars at them or whatever, and they can just buy their way through all of the resources and buy any rare stuff they need from people. Or otherwise, they might have to go out on their own and do a little harvesting, or join some group that will support them as a builder, so long as they keep making that awesome build and it's somewhat functional or whatever. It's going to be a PvP arena that's going to be featured or something. So there's definitely a lot of ways it could get real interesting with the community, and how builders kind of have to get involved with people in a little bit of a different way, but at the same time they still potentially will have the choice to stay on their claim if they want to.
Yeah, what you kind of closed with there is kind of what the main point I was going to pick up is that the functionality that they've put into claims and that they appear to be wanting to further put into claims with like permissions 2.0 as we heard it months ago. When that kind of stuff comes in, people are going to get so much customization to their own claims that they're really going to be able to filter out the outside world to an extent. They're going to be able to be in their own little world if that's how they want to play. I think we've all seen pretty clearly from SOE that they want to make sure that people can play the game the way they want to. Of course, they have a design goal in mind and everything, but with Landmark especially, it seems like they want people to be able to, play the game their way and do the things they like to do. And for somebody, if that's a builder that wants to have their own, underground workshop and not be bothered at all, it's going to be really easy for them to, make a claim that you can't even access without teleporting into and, be in your own little world. So I definitely think that new systems will increase what people can do and the ability for people to interact, but it's definitely not going to force the community to interact too much. I mean, once we start seeing more interdependency for resources becoming rarer, people that want to be in their own, do everything themselves are going to have a much steeper climb to accomplish everything on their own, but it will still potentially be possible for them to do everything on their own if they have the time, from the way I see it. But
and it's really kind of hard to understand, like even if it's hard to understand what the end game of Landmark is, because we've talked about it here that Landmark is a building tool for not just EverQuest Next, but future games that are going to come out, sci-fi games, World War II, I don't know, whatever. The possibilities are practically endless. Now, if they start to take away the ease of access to all these things, it's going to be a lot harder for players to be involved in that kind of content creation, and it's going to take away from that aspect of what Landmark could be and turn it more into a game. I mean, do you guys see do you guys think on the other side, like maybe there is some validity to allowing Landmark to stay how it is now? To be honest,
no. The community, the size of the community is, an indicator of it can't stay the way it is. Not at all.
Yeah, you're right.
No way.
That's absolutely what I would think.
The only way it could is if completely 100% free, all you're buying is costumes for yourself, and all materials are completely free. That's about it. That's not market viable at that point.
Well, then your Project Spark.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yep.
As long as you have Windows 8, you download it and you play.
Yeah. Or My Dream is another one. It's like Indie Landmark. In fact, they actually have little rock guys that can path on the voxel terrain. They just got them in yesterday.
As it is now, I mean, I don't log into Landmark at all, and I know several people that did, but it just...
Yeah. I log in
I'm really
in the
hoping
mornings almost
with
every day and do nothing. I farm copper for my claim. I got some ideas now though. I'm gonna start playing some more. I think it's all about having an idea. Sorry, I interrupted.
I was just saying, I'm really hopeful with monsters, with adding risk, that's going to actually make me more, in an economy. You put all those things in, it's going to make me want to play more, and I assume other people as well. But
I mean, it helps bring us into the concept of EverQuest Next. It helps hype us up, because right now the landmark was designed originally to be this hype train for EverQuest Next, the precursor to it. And right now, even though they separated it, I still feel like they wanted that, and it's not happening because of the way that it is. So totally agree with all the things that you guys are saying. It makes total sense. But I do think that we need Morgar definitely patrolling as an NPC in the game, patrolling everywhere with a big stick, and if you're not role-playing, he will enforce it on you, because that was something that he said he was going to do.
Okay, mobs and role-playing and the economy, this actually all, and I'm going to just be real brief about it, the tree discussion with Dave at E3 2013. So we were chatting, he didn't really want to talk about EverQuest Next very much at all, but we pretty much I started a discussion with him about the idea of the way that you fight mobs and the way that you kill them being relative to the type of loot. And, basically a mob can be easier or harder depending on the way you have to fight it. If you're just going to fight a tree by burning it, well, shoot, it's just going to go up in flames. Even if it's, if it's a really water-bound tree, then fine, freeze it, make the leaves fall off, it'll stop regenerating because it can't photosynthesize anymore, and then just go smash it up. Or try to split it with lightning, was what he suggested. Now, the other idea is, well, if you char it, you're only going to get, like, ash and charred wood. There's the lightning struck wood from, I can't remember, I guess that's Arcade or whatever. That's such a big deal of an item. So I could see that being something if you kill it with lightning versus if you spill acid on it or whatever, and that's how you kill it, and what kind of is left behind from that. If you fight it during the day, if you fight it during the night, if you do cause the leaves to fall off, is it going to then start poking at you with the branches and start stabbing at you and be way more powerful and way faster as a trade-off for losing regeneration? So there's a lot of ways that how you fight it and how you can fight it and how you can get loot from it are all based on what you're able to do for the situation. If you just need to kill it to get it out of the way, burn it with fire. If you're trying to get top-notch living wood from it, you're gonna methodically main tank as much as you can and try to have someone absorbing the damage as that tree is wailing away on people as you're trying to just chop it up and preserve as much of the material as possible.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, not to totally undercut, a pretty awesome concept and, a way of thinking to do mechanics in a game. Just from what we saw in the interview today with how they kind of answer, they answered, what was it, the race class ability type question. It seems like they're really hesitant to put anything in the game that's going to encourage any type of min-maxing or people to feel like they are obligated to, go down a specific path with their classing or their ability choices. And, implementing a type of loot system like that might, lead people to say, okay, well, if I'm going to fight this and I need to get this, then I definitely have to fight this way. And that kind of takes away from their, the way that they want people to be attached to their characters by having a fighting style that fits what you do and, having a flavor to, we've already seen in the stuff they've showed us how so many abilities are really kind of do the same thing. They just have a different flavor. And, I would expect, they want to ensure that people's flavors matter and that, they can be impactful doing things the way they want to do things, without being totally sent down a predetermined.
But, Bill, I don't think that, I do understand what you're saying. I don't think that would really breach too heavily onto Neuro's idea, because first of all, there is the concept of economy, which we've talked about, where we want to have this economy that's flourishing and has a lot of people depending on other people. If they make it difficult to respec, if they make it so you don't just go to the tab, which is what I'm starting to feel like maybe is the case, you don't just go to the tab, hit reset, and you can repick all your stuff, where it's it takes a little bit of effort to do it, then people won't feel forced because they won't really be able to just do it like that, so they'll rely.
Everything is reliant on your gear and your keywords. Your spec is your gear and keyword build. It's not do I reset my points in this tree. So your
but abilities, spec, each class has abilities.
Well, you'll
too.
have class abilities, but your spec, the other part of it, the add-ons will be you may have the option to click a button and switch to a different class, but you don't have the right gear in your bag or your bank to put together a viable whole package. So you may find yourself in a position where you really want to be some like beast warrior with an axe, but because of what you've been able to afford and who you've met and where you've gone, your best option is really that you're shooting people with a bow.
Sure, but so as far as what Neuro was saying, like with the loot though, that, you know, I mean, if you're approaching a mob in a different way, you know, and you can't approach it in the way, you can't do it, you're a fire mage, all you can do is burn down that tree. Then that forces you to interact with players and be involved in the economy, because you can just go and maybe there's something that you can do that somebody else can't do, and then you can trade, and that's something that is a realistic, you know, trade, and it's something that we deal with as humans, and I think that is also a really good instigator for our economy. So I think that ultimately that concept could work in EverQuest Next because of the systems they have. I think that it, depending on the ways that respecking and all that kind of stuff goes, it could work as well there. But of course, you know, like Vel said, they definitely are showing that they are hesitant to.
Well, you make some really, you guys, like both of you guys, from the system and from the way that you've, you know, extrapolated on it, Geo. It does, like, there are some great points because, you know, it really is it does go back to this debate where I kind of mentioned it just briefly, you know, when we were talking to the developers, but we didn't really jump on the topic, was, you know, this whole debate of, you know, frustrating players versus forcing interdependency, because that's like one of these delicate balances in today's MMOs. You want to make sure that your players need each other, but you don't want to frustrate them to make them think that they can't do something, you know, without, you know, do it like they're feeling forced to do something necessarily. So it's kind of a balance, and it'll have to be something that they kind of talk about and decide. But it's definitely, you know, you guys made some great points. That would be a great way to force some kind of, you know, social interdependency between people and force people to need each other a little more, which, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of mechanics we don't see quite yet that are going to force people to do that. And, you know, this could be another one of those potential ones. So that's, you know, some great points. So I didn't want to, that's why I said before I started, I don't want to undercut the concept. It's really good. I just wanted to bring up that counter argument about, you know, the way they're doing things currently. So it just needs to have both sides out there.
Well, I guess the short answer for how a single builder would overcome something like that is just group up with other builders or whatever. Sure, one of you is weak, but with horizontal progression, 3 or 4 of you can probably take that tree down with your axes just fine. The tree monster, I mean, not a regular tree.
And now, you know, even regular trees, that would be really cool to see. People, certain resources require parties to harvest. Like, you know, you need certain people to man the machine A, and while the other person mans machine B, while the other person goes and gets everybody Dr. Peppers. Like, it would be really cool to see that, like, people need to work together for things other than, you know, downing monsters.
All right, time to run around the circle and say our goodnights. I'm going to go first, and we're going to finish with our host for the night, Velix, who's done a great job with leading our discussion. Thank you all so much for stopping by. I apologize for not being so active in the Landmark community for a while, but with some changes that I've made to things that I've been doing that have been leading me down a not as fun path as, you know, playing games. I'm pretty excited about some upcoming projects and things.
Oh, wow.
I've got I got some things in mind. So hope to be seeing a lot more of you. Maybe not as much on Twitch, and maybe more in game too. Legendary Neurotoxin, take it away.
Absolutely. I am the current record holder for wearing the Nagafen hat on camera at over 160 hours. Let's round of applause here, everybody. And aside from that, you can find me, of course, on TheoryForge here every week, on Live Feature Ran, on Content and Creations, which leads into the Evercast show. So definitely tune in for all that awesome Landmark content. And moving it on to you, Phantom X.
That mic is muted.
Yeah, I tend to type, so
Yeah.
I have a mechanical keyboard. But anyways, yeah, just nothing new for me. Just enjoy being here. So see y'all next week.
Cool.
Our token fan of the show, the in-house fan.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about some things that I have going on. We have a lot going on with me anyway. Tomorrow, Vel and I are going to be continuing our first like official episode of Lorgasm again, because we kind of did like a pre-show last week where we just talked about what we're going to be doing and how we're changing things. Starting tomorrow, we are going to be going full force into Lorgasm again, getting you guys all the best information you can, and trying to. And now we both have read the book, so we're going to be really hitting that hard. Also, want to shout out the book club that Diggs has let me know about. There is a book club on the forums, the EQN forums. I don't have anything to do with that, but I did want to shout it out on being such a noble cause. Also tonight, really important. Tonight we have Friday Night Fight Club. And it's going to be starting back up again because of the new combat iterations. So for those of you guys who don't know, Friday Night Fight Club, basically tonight we're going to be focusing on the new armors, talking about what they mean, some of the good combinations. Once we give you that information, we're going to ask you guys to come and participate in the tournament. The tournament, the winner will get a $25 loot card, so you can't go wrong with that. And it's just fun, good times, and a great way to learn and get yourself involved in the PvP inside of Landmark. Other than that, of course, my stream Monday through Friday. Love you guys all, and go ahead, Bella.
Yeah, he already mentioned Lorgasm. We're going to do that tomorrow. I also have not been as active in the community, kind of like Sir Tsagh, but I do have some upcoming things that I'm pretty excited about. I know I have, another interview with Steve and Terry that I've talked about last week, and just been some changes and haven't been able to quite get that finished yet. But expect that next week. And also with Lorgasm, I'm going to be kind of changing some things up. With what I'm producing, and EQ Hammer will kind of be doing a little bit something different next week. So expect to hear more about that, and I'll be posting on Twitter some things with things that are changing and where we're going in the future. And other than that, though, thank you guys all for coming. This has been, this is one of our favorite things to do for the week for the 5 of us, and we hope it's one of your guys' favorite things to come and watch, especially a show like today with the developers. There's not many opportunities like that. It was pretty fun to have them, and we hope that our questions combined with your questions brought a lot of good answers and information for you guys that you didn't know about before. So thank you so much for coming. I will wrap us up here now, and we are going to raid Kobit's. Tsagh is posted in the chat. We're going to go over if you guys want to give them a raid and jump over there. But thank you so much for coming. You guys have a nice day, and we will catch you next week.